Welcome in, guys. What's going on? What's going on? Half of the week is over. It is Wednesday. Thought we'd take a peep at snow real quick. That was a hell of a drop that thing had. But again, welcome in, guys. Welcome in. A few minutes, everyone rolling. Get through some tickers that I got. Pretty much peep my attention. Some fire setups, I think, that are in the brewing, but just a hell of a day that we had. Let's see what's going on. Anything going on Twitter right now? I doubt it. Nah, no current headlines right now. Just a sec, guys. Tom! Eat Vive. Wait, I did not see Vive. What happened to Vive? I know you were looking at it and you told me the chart looked horrible, Tom. Damn, that thing got murdered. What? That is free falling. Ew, that's disgusting. Wait, is there really a trendline support here? There might be one. Let me see if I can peep one. Yeah, you actually might have one. You might be pretty much approaching that trendline support right here. Probably off of the monthly looks a little better. Yeah, the monthly looks a little better. Yeah, you're pretty much approaching it. I mean, it's right there for the taking, more or less. Right at the 198 mark or so. So what, give or take about another $10 maybe? We could touch right into that monthly trend line support and we'll see if she ends up finding support there or not. But damn, that's a horrible drop. Ew. That's disgusting. The one that did catch my attention though was the snow one. Primarily off of the weekly. I was looking at it. I think if Tom, if you remember, I almost added it to the to the newsletter. I think that was that like not this past weekend, the weekend before. I almost dropped it on the newsletter for puts. It would have actually paid too. But snow, just a beautiful little megaphone action here. You can pretty much see on the weekly time frame. So given the fact that we're pretty much at the lower band here towards the support of the megaphone, we can basically come down as low as about 142 or so until we find support. So I would not be surprised to see if this downtrend continues on this matter. And also given the fact of the market conditions, I mean, if market does decide to turn around here after this monster rally, maybe we'd start to see this one just continue this downtrend here down towards that low 140 area. But that'd be beautiful. Tatum, what's going on? I haven't heard from you in a while. But welcome in, guys. So yeah, it's just looking at some of those earnings plays. Snow, I almost played that Snow earnings. I saw that Gigum got into it, if I'm not mistaken. And then also, I think Dan took a put on it as well. So those guys will probably likely just be feasting tomorrow morning. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if it's up like 300 and some odd percent or something like that. So some crazy number, but that was a hell of a drop. So we'll see what ends up getting a continuation of that. But I think that low 140s mark will likely be a nice little support area to catch a bounce. But until then, you're playing with a knife basically. I would stay away from it. Let me actually get into some of the names that I was pretty much looking at real quick. Why do we have so much AMD call flow? Well, what ended up happening with AMD was that there was pretty much, if you want to say quote unquote, a big whale that stepped in and they ended up buying calls. So if we remember, if I pretty much just pop up the chart since you're asking why we had so many orders, pretty much take that out. Go into probably say the 2 hour, give you a better time frame. We ended up having this rip, and this rip that we ended up having here pretty much was basically because of the fact that there was a pretty large whale order that stepped in. But once we ended up getting that nosedive, it looks like shorts tried to cover because some of them got caught. And that's why they pretty much were just hitting the head on the 120 calls. And that's basically what I ended up finding out once I was scrolling through Twitter. And I found out, if you guys remember, I was looking to hold AMD calls into yesterday morning, that was. Luckily, I sold right at the open because that ended up just being a waterfall to the downside. And then that's when we saw them actually step into support and they ended up trying to buy it up. And basically we saw that nice little reversal right back towards the 118 mark. Do I expect continuation on this one? I would be a little hard pressed to say that it's going to go any higher. But I did have a little bit of resistance here, right around the 119 mark or so. So we'll see what it ends up doing. But just the fact that it's starting to look a little bit more so like a head and shoulders potentially. So if we start to curl tomorrow, tech starts to do a little sour tomorrow, I would stay clear of AMD. That's pretty much what I would say. But I do have quite a few names that are pretty much out of the scope of tech, and that's really what I wanted to really look at and gauge outside of tech here today. And so I think the only tech name I do have that caught my attention was Facebook. But just given the fact that we had such a monster rally, and you pretty much heard me going back and forth with Avery early on, is that for the most part, majority of the day, tech was not really participating in this rally as much as I expected. Especially the names of looking at Shop, looking at Google, looking at Amazon, and Tesla early on. They just did not participate in this rally early on in the day. And so later on in the evening, just granted the fact that, of course, we saw how much SPY was up, we saw how much the Qs were up on a broader perspective, it literally just dragged them from death, basically, it felt like. And so that's why I do expect the fact that once we actually start to see a little bit of a pullback or a little bit of a rollover tomorrow, we may see tech probably take the largest hit out of it, even if we do get continuation on the upside. But I do not want to get caught in the pullback in that tech sector itself. And just the fact that Microsoft and Apple just carried us so much and so heavily, I just want to pretty much avoid it tomorrow. Unless there's something that's really meaningful to the downside, then I'll be there for that. All right. But other than that, let me get into some of the plays that pretty much just caught my attention here. Some of the setups that I was really just watching. First one was pretty much Adobe. This is pretty much an under the radar name here. We had a nice little, what you would call as a descending broadening wedge type action. It caught my attention because of the fact that defined support, defined resistance. It looks like we can get some nice continuation out of this one. It does have a nice little gap fill as well that caught my attention. We'll push that gap fill right into the 483 mark, and then we can hit our head right into resistance at this 489. So this is one that I wouldn't mind pretty much looking at, especially if we see Dow names just start to rally and just continue tomorrow off of the 600 point rip that the Dow had today. I would look to see if there's continuation off of names like this one, in particular, Adobe. Of course, the only concern is the liquidity, so that's definitely something that you want to be cautious about. But I love the setup here. I love the move right into resistance off of this descending broadening wedge. So I'm going to look for continuation right into the gap fill and potential into that resistance at this 489, 490 mark. All right. So that's just one that caught my attention in particular. Other one was ULTA, and you probably heard me mention this one to Sig before the close there. Watching ULTA primarily because of the fact that it has a nice little inverted head and shoulders action. Inverted left shoulder, head, inverted right. You have the pop over the neckline. And so what I'm going to look for is the retracement for a continuation. So look for this pullback here towards the 374.70 mark. We'll look to end up buying it there in terms of the demand zone, basically, right off the support. And we'll take it right into what is this gap fill that's left to be completed at this mark of 396. You can call it ballpark 397 is what I'll be looking at. This is one of those names that just pretty much goes under the radar. It doesn't necessarily follow the market direction too much in terms of, if the market's really red. I've seen a lot of cases where Alta has just been green as well. So this is one of those names that kind of intrigues me. I know the only issue here as well is the liquidity. And that's one of the things that you definitely want to check going into tomorrow if you're looking to maybe play this for the puts down to the downside here towards that 374 mark. Otherwise, you wait for that 374 mark and then you try to get a nice little position to go long and go into the gap fill. All right. So that's the second one that caught my attention. Other one was Dare. This one was just pretty much staring me right in my face, and I literally had to just keep it on the watch list here going into tomorrow. This one's just pretty much a ripper. Just ripped $17 out of the blue here today. That literally just had to was an eye catcher towards the end of the day, and I'm like, how did I not see this early on in the day? But you see this beautiful megaphone action. You see how quickly this one has pretty much accelerated since the end of last month, basically, from February 24th, from 327 already pushing north of 375 here. That is a hell of a rip, but I don't think it's quite done just yet. So if you notice this little blue line right here, this was prior trend line support before we broke down within the megaphone. I'm looking to end up retesting this prior support as a resistance. And so we could see this get another leg pretty high up here towards that 393 mark, in which we test resistance as now. And then that would be where my supply zone pretty much also hits. Between that 390 to 393 mark would be where my supply is, and which we'll likely see some sellers start to step in, and we'll see some retracement before maybe even going another long position ends up taking place, and we take this right into resistance of the megaphone. But just a short term play, I think this will be one, maybe some more so for a day trade. If I see this one start to make a move here, if we get a push right over that 382 mark, I will look to get into this one and take it right into the 390, 393 supply zone I'm looking at to test the resistance. And that'll be just a beautiful trade because we see how much of a ripper this one has just been over the course here since last month. So that's one that caught my attention. I think I had to bring that one up to everyone. Obviously, this one's another one where it's low liquidity. So those are pretty much three names that just go under the radar here. And I think the fourth name that's pretty much under the radar also was LULU. And I name dropped this one on live today as well. And I think I probably put this on the 4 hour. Spread it out. All right, yeah, looks a little bit on the 4 hour. But Lulu, I was like, when I looked at Lulu pretty much towards the market close, I'm like, Lulu literally just looks textbook. And I hate the name in particular. I do think it's a little bit overvalued. Even at these levels, I don't know why. I know that Darian usually likes Lulu, but it just has a textbook setup. You have a beautiful little downtrend break, pretty much well defined. You had the little retest, and you're getting continuation. So, two levels of resistance I'm looking at 334 and also 338 here before you enter into a gap fill between 344 up towards 348. So, about a $4 gap you're looking at. And so, I would expect continuation out of this one. We get over this 334 mark, that'll likely be the trigger to go into calls and then look to see if we end up rejecting 338. Maybe it'll be a $4 scalp if it ends up rejecting or not. But I'll look to see that as my first initial resistance. Otherwise, this is a face rip to test gap fill at that 343 mark. And then you have the $4 gap. So I think it's well defined in terms of the setup and the risk reward in this one. And that's why I couldn't leave this one out of the watch list here today. So just a beautiful textbook setup on this one. But again, those four tickers up to this one here, those are low liquidity names. So just be aware of the contracts and the strikes that you're pretty much trying to get into if you're playing the upside here. All right. Leads me into that one tech name that just caught my attention. It's the only one that really stood out to me in particular, and that was Facebook. The reason I say Facebook is because it actually had a beautiful little descending channel action as I pretty much just expanded here. You see the shaded area, which is just a well-defined descending channel. We had the breakout. You had the little head and shoulders, which I know that Avery mentioned. I think that was maybe yesterday or so. Probably yesterday morning he mentioned that little head and shoulders action. Well, we did end up breaking down all the head and shoulders. We had the beautiful retest off of this downtrend channel for support. That was obviously your demand zone where buyers stepped in off of that support level. And we got that little rip here as it tried to participate in the market rally today. So two things can either happen here. Either we end up breaking down below this 204 mark and we get a push, maybe a sell-off, I want to say for a better term, towards 198. Otherwise, if we end up getting a push here and we make a move over 210, then I'm looking for this gap fill towards 217 to 218. And that'll be if the tech rally continues, basically. All right. That's why I say that's a big if. Two things can either happen. Either we lose the 210 mark and we go down towards 198, or we get into calls on the break over 210 and we play that right up towards the gap fill here, that 217, 218 mark. So that's very much a directional play. And that's why I say out of all the names in the tech sector, this is pretty much the one that's, if it just feels a little more pretty much well defined in terms of the directional move. And that's why I like the risk reward in either direction. All right. So I think you have a well defined move here, 210 down to the 198 mark I mentioned. So that'll be beautiful. Otherwise, you play this right into the gap to the upside. All right. Other one that pretty much caught my attention was Coin. This is not a name that I pretty much like to play. I pretty much usually stay away from a kind of name like this. But it's just the fact that it has a well-defined little channel, if you want to say, that is pretty much playing off of. As you see, it pretty much rejected that halfway on the channel, it tried to make the push towards the end of the close. It pretty much rejected right into the halfway of that channel, and it couldn't make it quite towards that resistance. So I'm gonna look to see if we end up breaking down off of this little trend line support. As you see, very well defined. We lose this 194 mark. This is pretty much a free fall towards 199, 198, and that'll be a beautiful short tomorrow, especially if the market decides it wants to take a U-turn. So I like that in particular. Otherwise, you're looking to get over this halfway mark on this ascending channel. We push north of this 196 half, then we can make a quick move towards 198 to 200, which I have my overall resistance at. All right. So another one, well-defined risk, beautiful little trendline support. Play it off of that trendline support. We break that 194. I love the risk reward more so towards the downside in terms of that 199, 189, 188 level in terms of a short. All right. So that's one. I do like that one. I would not mind getting into that one tomorrow if the setup is particularly there and the market conditions are there as well. All right. Other one that caught my attention was this face rip that Caterpillar did today. I know that Tom literally name dropped it as well, but just the fact that we're going into resistance here tomorrow, and that's why I say pretty much paying attention to Dow names outside of tech. This is another one pretty much playing it off of the resistance that you're pretty much about within inches away here at that 194 level. Look to see how you play it off of that 194 mark. If we end up breaking over this resistance, I have a hard resistance at 195. If we crack over 195, then this will be a continuation towards 198 half, and then we have the gap fill here above 201.60. So I'll look for that one to see if I don't like anything particularly in the tech sector, and this one really stands out in terms of breaking my resistance here at that 195. I would not mind getting in this one for a beautiful continuation because that was a hell of a face rip with tremendous strength today. And so I'll play that one over the 195 mark. Otherwise, if we reject right off of this 194, 195 mark, you're looking at this gap fill down below 185. And obviously, market conditions will likely tell you the better part in which you should end up shorting this or not. All right. So, well, another one pretty much going right into resistance. Let's see how you play it off of it. Break the resistance. We're getting calls over 195. Otherwise, we reject. You're looking for a breakdown under 194, 193 here, and you play it towards the gap fill at 185. And we basically retrace about half of this move from today. All right. Other one was Zoom. This is one I was looking at towards the end of the close as well. Caught my attention. I want to say it's a textbook setup. I really do. I just do not particularly like Zoom in general, but it just looks like it has to be on the watch list. It's an inverted cup and handle. You see the inverted cup, well-defined resistance support levels to define that cup, and then you have this beautiful little channel formation that's going on. And maybe I can see it on the 30-minute. You probably see the support on this channel a little more defined here. You see pretty much that trend line support is well defined, and you're cracking that trend line support right into the close. And that's really what caught my attention here, is cracking that trend line support off of this little handle that we have. So if we end up breaking down on this under this 120 level, as you see, it's pretty much already down after hours. This could be end up being a free fall down towards 116, 115, and potentially even testing this pretty much what I'd say the support of this cup at 114 half. So I would not be surprised to see if it even bleeds more, but that's your short-term targets. Especially in this kind of environment, I'm looking to get quick profits and quick price ranges in terms of just trying to get my profits very quickly. I'm not trying to diamond hold. Obviously, you could diamond hold it, trying to get into a short here and just look for it to play out and break the support overall. But if it were me entering tomorrow, I would look to get in under this 120 mark. Obviously, I want to see the market weakness as well. We take this down towards 116 and potentially down to the 114 to test the support of the cup, and that would just be a fire short right there. So just a textbook setup. Otherwise, if we end up trying to reclaim this channel for this handle, you're looking at your upside potential here towards that 124 mark as your resistance. And then you also do have a little gap here that's more so on the 5 minute at that 125 mark. So another one, well-defined pattern, well-defined pretty much targets in terms of what you're looking at. But this one does favor the downside more so than the upside. And so this will be a beautiful one if the market wants to take pretty much a U-turn. I will be there for this one as well, despite the fact that I do not like to particularly trade Zoom, especially down at these current levels. But the setup is just there, textbook. And as you see, it's pretty much just try to crack that support level, which basically tells me that it's pretty much screaming to just free fall right now. All right. And then the last one I just wanted to point out was Starbucks. This was just another one. Again, looking outside of tech, you're pretty much looking at names that are not within that tech sector, particularly in case we do get a U-turn and maybe the down names are pretty much stronger. You're looking at different names outside of that tech. This is one of those names. You see this pretty much very well-defined little descending channel action. We're at the upper half of the channel basically, as which we can make a nice push towards the resistance. I do want to put it to a lower time frame so you can actually see the gap that's there presently. So as you see, again, above the upper half of the descending channel, you have a beautiful gap fill here above 54.54, and then, oh, 94.54, I take that back. And then we'll complete the gap here at 95.12. So another one, well defined. As long as you end up holding this halfway on this upper band of this descending channel above 92, then you could take this right into that 95 mark, in which is about a $3 move you're looking at towards the upside. So I like that very much. Another one, as you see, is pretty much well defined. I think the patterns here and the risks that I'm pretty much laying out is well defined in terms of what I'm looking at. But bigger picture, as I pretty much expressed, I kind of want to stay away from the tech sector tomorrow. Obviously, if the market wants to take a U-turn and we start to melt, then you're looking at tech for uh, pretty much a short across the board. Otherwise, I just want to stay clear just because it does feel like it's going to be quite choppy after just the drastic movement that we had off of the tech sector in general today. All right. Quick glance at SPY because I know that a lot of you probably want to know what we're sitting at with the market overall. And basically looking at this, and I can probably put this into the 4 hour, give you a better, brighter image. You do see that we pretty much tried to smack out of the downtrend resistance and we wicked right over it. We've seen that we wicked over it multiple times. This is not a defined breakout just yet. And that's what everyone wants to wait for tomorrow to see. Do we get a continuation out of this move? Or was this pretty much just another spike out of what the market volatility has been? Basically. All right. Because we've seen these days where SPY has rallied 7, 10 points and then we go right back down. And that's what we pretty much are a little bit more concerned about. And you probably heard Avery on live rather early on, like, is the market going to end up doing this? Maybe this could be the scenario because there's not a definitive answer in terms of this being a bull market or bear market just yet. All right. No, Powell may have saved the day today, but what may end up happening tomorrow when he pretty much opens his mouth yet again tomorrow morning, which, if I'm not mistaken, it's 10 a.m. Eastern that he's going to be talking again tomorrow. So we'll see what he ends up doing yet again. But you literally just basically rejected right off of resistance on SPY here right into the close. And as you see, we're pretty much down about 90 cents after hours. So I want to see us get a continuation off of this mark. I want to see us get right back over 440 on SPY here. We break over this 440 mark, then I am targeting towards 442.30. And then there is a gap here that we're pretty much sitting at. And I probably see the gap more so if I go down towards the 2 hour. Yeah, very well defined gap here that we're sitting at above this level of 443.77 and completing at 446.27. So that's a well defined gap that we're looking at, but we do need to get over this 442 mark before we can start pushing to test that gap fill. All right. So, but I would hope in the morning that we pretty much reclaim that 440 level on SPY by the morning. And then we can start to make our push towards 442 and then the gap fill test that we end up having. That would be the ideal scenario for bulls. Otherwise, if we start to lose momentum and we just start to retrace, I think below this 435 mark, it's going to end up spelling trouble for bulls. And you're going to want to stay clear on any call positions. All right. But also look at the pretty much the difference in terms of the S&P and the Dow. And that's why I kind of wanted to point out some more names in the Dow in particular, because it did seem like the Dow names actually performed a lot better than the Qs in general. So if you do see early on weakness with the tech sector, look to your Dow names is what I would say, because they do seem like they do have a lot more strength, a lot more momentum off of today than the tech sector in general. All right. So that's what I would pretty much advise. But I think that kind of wraps up what I really want to look at, the names that I'm pretty much looking at in general. But other than that, again, the tech sector, if the market wants to go ahead and start to roll over again tomorrow, and this just basically ended up being a fake out, I'll be there to short the tech names. Otherwise, I'm gonna likely end up pretty much just staying still, maybe just looking at Facebook off of the tech sector, and I'll play it off of that. All right. I looked at quite a few names today, so I'm just gonna pick. I'm just gonna look at two names here real quick. What did you guys mention real quick? Someone mentioned Moderna, and someone mentioned LMT. All right, I'm gonna look at those two names real quick. Granted, the fact that I looked at quite a few names today, that's why I'm not doing necessarily a ticker request, but I'm just gonna glance at those two names just very quickly. And pretty much looking at LMT, and I know that this has pretty much been one that, if I'm not mistaken, Anthony was holding for quite a while. But what I'm actually looking at pretty much is a little rising wedge type action. And that's why I'm a little bit more concerned, probably for a bull scenario here. You do have a little bit of a rising wedge type action that's playing out here right now. And that's what I would be a little bit cautious about. So if you end up breaking this trend line support, you obviously see the gap fill that you're pretty much flirting with down towards 439, in which you're going to get quite the dump off of this. Otherwise, you end up looking for resistance to break at 453, and you're going to test the highs here. Looks like pretty much a hard resistance right here at 457. That's about a $7 move up is what you're looking at. So 453 needs to break the resistance, and then you get a continuation up towards 457, and then the wick fill at all-time highs here at 458. All right. Otherwise, if you end up breaking the support here, level I would likely be watching to see if we end up break under to start pretty much acceleration of the sell-off will be 448, and then you're looking at the gap fill here under 439 yet again. All right, and that's how I would pretty much look at it. All right. Other than that, someone just mentioned the other name you dropped was Moderna real quick. What am I looking at with Moderna? Is there anything? I want to say it started to look like an inverted head and shoulders. I mean, I guess you could probably say that. Let's see if there's a little more defined trendline resistance here that stands out. Yeah, it does. Wicks pretty much all aligned right here. So you literally ran right into resistance, right into the close here, in which you see the wicks pretty much all aligned right here. I wouldn't necessarily say this is an inverted head and shoulders. It looks rather weak as an inverted head and shoulders. You could say this is pretty much a little rising wedge action going into that trendline resistance, but I would not try to take a position here until you break this for 148.62 mark. You break 148.62, then I will look to play this right into the resistance here sitting at 150. All right. Above 150, then you do have the gap fill sitting up here at this 152 mark. But other than that, wait for this level to break here. Wait for the 148.62 to break before you try to get into Moderna calls. Otherwise, you're going to end up seeing probably a fake out, and it's going to come right back down after smacking into resistance today. Level I would look for pretty much selling pressure to start escalating will be under 146. And then you'll take this down towards this level here of 143 rather quickly. All right. And that's how I would pretty much look at Moderna right now, but not an ideal spot that I would try to go long just yet until you get over that level I mentioned of that 148.62, and then try to play it towards that gap fill. All right. But other than that, guys, that's gonna wrap up what I'm looking at here today. Pretty much, hopefully, going through so many tickers kind of give you ideas of what to look for tomorrow. I honestly tried to look outside of the tech sector. Just the fact of what I saw today did not ideally look nice for me for a continuation tomorrow. Microsoft and Apple, I mean, they held it down today, literally just carried this entire rally for the tech sector. That was a hell of a move that they did. And we just saw they propped up so many names that just felt like they were so dead, especially names like Amazon, Google, Tesla. They literally just carried them. So, again, beautiful price action today. Let's see what Powell says tomorrow morning at the opening bell there. He's going to talk roughly about 30 minutes or so after the opening bell, and we'll see what he says. If there's any carriation over towards tomorrow, in which we see momentum off of this. Otherwise, wait to see what the market gives you tomorrow. Don't rush it out the bell. Wait to see what the feedback is off of Powell, because as you see today, we had quite the rapid movement up and down until Powell pretty much stopped talking, and then we just saw the full blown explosion to the upside. So wait for pretty much Powell to stop talking, I would say, for the trend to form if you do not want to get caught in a directional move. Just wait for him to finish whatever crap he's gonna end up coming out of his mouth. Wait for him to finish saying what he says. Wait for the market to respond, and then we'll go off of there. All right. I wouldn't say rip your SPY calls, DK, because obviously we're pretty much right into the resistance. We could obviously see continuation off of this. I did see buyers trying to step in, so I'm not gonna say that bulls are pretty much dead. I mean, after such a rally today, it's just that the tech sector is probably gonna be very selective in which names really run, and that's what I'm a little bit more cautious about in terms of the tech sector. And that's why I just wanted to look more so towards names outside of tech, but honestly, I do expect the market to continue to go up. It's just that I'm a little bit more hesitant in terms of the tech sector and what I saw from it just being dragged up right now. All right. Wait till the overseas money floods in overnight. I wouldn't doubt it. That's why I say, I mean, spy. I wouldn't say rip SPY calls right now because they did buy calls today. All right, I will say that we did see the buying pressure start to literally step in today. It was a good sign. I think everyone wanted to hear what Powell said rather than getting a 50 basis point rate hike. We're gonna get the 25. I think the market really liked that, and that's why we saw such a hard push. And I do think that he's likely going to end up echoing his sentiments tomorrow in a bull scenario, and we're going to see the market continue to rip. All right. It's just that I don't expect to see an explosive move out of the tech sector too much after what we saw today. That's my only caution I have tonight. All right. But am I changing my name to Bull Drake? I will change my name once I hear Powell stop talking tomorrow. All right. If Powell stops talking and the market continues to go up tomorrow, then yes, I will change my name tomorrow. But if he ends up stop talking tomorrow and the market decides that it wants to just take a puke, then I'm going to end up remaining bearish. All right. So everything pretty much tells me right now we're into resistance. So you need to end up convincing me that we're gonna go over that resistance, get a continuation tomorrow before I change my name. But it was a hell of a rally. That was like today. I told Avery on live. Once we ended up breaking a certain level, I was like, all right, that's when I'm gonna go bullish. I think it was that 436.20 level I was watching on SPY. Once we ended up breaking 436.20, that's when I went bullish for the day basically, and we saw that beautiful rip pushing towards that 440. So, I mean, I'm very much just trying to play it level by level. I'm not trying to be here to play bull or bear necessarily, definitively and diamond hold in either direction. It's just a matter of just playing it level by level, taking it day by day, and that's all it is. All right. But again, I'll wrap it up there, guys. I'll see you guys on live tomorrow morning. Let's hopefully for those of you that are bulls, let's hope that Jerome Powell just sticks to his guns off of what he said today. And I think if he echoes the sentiment off of today's words that he spewed out, then we should get some nice fluid movement and momentum off of tomorrow. All right. But I will call it quits there. You guys have a great evening. And again, I'll see you guys at opening bell tomorrow. But later, I'm out.